Nelson Mandela was born in 1918 and he died 2013. This simply means that he lived for 95 years. His father, Gadla Mandela, who was made a chief, was sacked. The British told the people that he was sacked because he was involved in corrupt practice, but later Nelson got to know that his father was sacked because his father stood against the lawlessness in the magistrate. Going forward, we should note that Rohilala got the name Nelson when he first resumed school. It was said that the English teacher have a custom or a culture of giving any South African who resumed school an English name, so Rohilala was given the name Nelson. Later on in his life, his father died, and Mandela suspected that this is as a result of the long illness the father was battling with. Later on, he was taken to the palace to live with Kogin Bataba. Kogin Bataba happened to be the palace chief, though he was also a South African. Right there at the palace of Kogin Bataba, he was enrolled to start going to school. Nelson Mandela was said to be an outstanding child that later in his life at age 16, he was taken along with his cousin to Tala for circumcision at age 16. Later on, he took up a skill as a privy council. He took up a skill as a privy council so that with the mindset that when he was done with his school, he would join the leadership body of South Africa. Now, it is at this point I want us to note that in the early lives of Mandela, he never saw the white as a threat to his life. Rather, he saw the British in South Africa as individuals who has come to better their country. Later on, Kongi Bataba found a wife for Mandela, and the name of this woman was Justice. Mandela, threatened by this sudden happening, ran for his life to Johannesburg. When he went to Johannesburg, we should note that he took up a job as a night watcher, which is a security guard in a crown mining company. But later on, he was sacked. It was in Johannesburg that the reality of racism dawned on Nelson Mandela. The life at Johannesburg was different from the one he experienced while growing up. At Johannesburg, there was a clear-cut difference between first-class and second-class citizens. It was so funny how across the road is a beautiful estate with constant light, beautiful environment, and what have you. But on the other side of the road is a poorly built place with workers, and so this was what the British subjected the South Africaners to. Going forward, it was said that Jogin Bataba later on forgave Nelson Mandela for running away before he finally passed on. Nelson Mandela finally decided to go back to school, university, to take up his degree as a law student, because initially he was expelled from school. Reason is because he partook in strike activities that led to boycotting of the school, and also ultimately led to the general strike of the country. Going forward, we should note that in Johannesburg, after experiencing the harsh segregation, he spent between 1940 to 1950 rallying for or protesting alongside other individuals. It is at this point we saw that through his friend, he has joined the ANC political party. The ANC is African National Congress. It was the standing political party for the South Africans then. So between 1940 to 1950, Nelson Mandela was seen protesting alongside other members against the harsh British segregation on the South Afrikaners. They wanted equal opportunities as that of their white counterparts. However, it should be noted that this protest was a non-violent protest. Later on, Mandela went on to form the Freedom Charter alongside other members. But while they were doing this thing and hoping that they will win, something happened. There was a shift to the armed resistance, as for the first time the white army people fired arms at the free protesters or the unarmed protesters. This armed resistance led to the death of over 62 individuals who came out to protest. Because of this, Nelson Mandela knew that something had to be done, lest they will not be, or their voice will not be considered. So they brought about a body called the Mokonto Wesizwe, which means spearhead of the nation. These individuals were armed with weapons, and anytime these protesters were going for their protests, these armed individuals will work with them. Later on, Nelson Mandela was arrested alongside other protesters on the ground that they were threats to the nation. And again, they also said that Mandela was busy traveling out of the country illegally. So this was what led to his arrest. He was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. Before the 5 years imprisonment elapsed, weapons were found in the headquarters of the ANC. Remember, ANC is African National Congress. Because of this, Nelson Mandela and other 7 leaders spearheading the ANC was sentenced to life imprisonment. Before he went to this jail, he gave a speech that if this is the cause, he's ready to die for it. In this speech, he said that he has served the black race and he has served the white race, and all he's seeking for, that these people be made equal. But since this is the cause, then he's ready to die for it. This speech was made to over thousands of people who was present on the day Nelson Mandela and other individuals were sentenced to life imprisonment. Between 1964 to 1982, he was kept at Robben Island. This island was an island that was secluded from every other living being, right? So they were kept somewhere in the middle of an ocean, an island in the middle of an ocean. Nelson Mandela was given a very small prison to stay with hunger and starvation. He was allowed to receive and write just 2 letters in a year. Later on, we could see that even while he was serving in this prison at Robben Island, he was still very much politically inclined, as he was seen educating other prisoners on the need to have a political stand. Later on, Nelson Mandela was moved from Robben Island to Paul Small Prison. The condition of this prison was better off, as he was given books to read and he was given good food, unlike that of Robben Island. Later on, there was this nation uproar or crisis over the release of Mandela. We should note that even while he was in prison, he was writing letters to members of his cabinet outside. So there was this uproar of his release, which led to the governor calling him for a negotiation. Later on, from that Portsmouth prison, he was retaken to Victor Verster's prison. That's three prison. There's the Robben Island prison, which he was isolated. There's the Portsmouth prison, which the living condition improved a little, and then the last prison was Victor Verster's prison. The condition of this prison was very okay, in the sense that there was air condition. He was living in a good bed, right? So things was a little better. It was in this prison he started negotiating with the government, and later on in 1990 they announced the release of Nelson Mandela to the nation. His release happened on the 11th of February 1990. On the day of his release, he walked out of his prison holding his wife Winnie Mandela. And on this day, thousands of supporters, both globally, by now his name was already global, everybody was hearing of him. So a lot of people came that day, traveled both far and wide to hear Nelson Mandela speak. When he came out from prison in 1990, he spent 4 years trying to negotiate with the British. This negotiation was what led to the first ever election in South Africa that took place in 1994, announcing Nelson Mandela as the first ever president of South Africa. He ruled as a president between 1994 to 1995. While he was there, the first thing he did was to draft a new constitution for South Africa. From this story told, we'll be able to highlight the achievement of Nelson Mandela, as well as the failures of Nelson Mandela as a leader in South Africa. Thank you so much.